I'll present it the only way I know how. 90% of the people with specific phobias do not seek treatment. We were talking about the specific phobias last time, and I found out what fear of being alone was, and if Emery comes in, I'll tell you what it was. Lots of different types of phobias. But the reality is, whether you've got myeciophobia, sociophobia, hypnophobia, triskaidekaphobia. Triskaidekaphobia, of course, is the fear of the number 13. Why do we fear the number 13? Because there were 13 disciples, and it was the 13th one that turned Jesus in. That's so, and he was crucified on the 13th of something, whatever, on Friday the 13th. He was crucified on Friday the 13th. Okay, so we're afraid of the number 13. If there were 15 floors, there would be no 13th floor in this building. The Japanese are afraid of the number
4.
Yeah, oh yeah, weird. I know. So it really all depends on who you are. 90% of the people that have specific phobias do not seek treatment. So despite the fact you're deathly afraid of snakes, you're deathly afraid of spiders, you're deathly afraid of elevators. I don't get on elevators, but there's a reason I don't get on elevators, and it doesn't have anything to do with fear. It's the fact that when I was working in the hospital, no matter how tall the damn hospital was, if I got on an elevator with patients or with non-patients with my tray to draw blood, everybody crawled into the other corner to get as far away from me as possible, and it made me feel bad. I didn't like that, so I try not to get in elevators. And besides, only lazy people get in elevators, no offense, Sheldon. Anyway, I've ridden in an elevator before. Anyway, so if you have, no matter what it is, clowns, whatever it is, then we're not actually going to treat you for your specific phobia. You're probably not going to seek treatment. Does it really bother you that you're deathly afraid of mice or rats? You never see them, so you don't even have to worry about it, right? If you're afraid of insects, just don't go outside, and certainly stay out of the jungle.
I was thinking about the hypnophobia. That would be really hard to deal with, right?
Hypnophobia, which one is that one? Fear of sleep?
Oh, unavoidable.
Try it sometime. Try to keep from sleeping. You fall asleep. You don't have a choice. But you fight it, and of course, you're afraid that you're going to die. Usually that's what it is. Specific phobias can develop at any time, but most animal phobias, of course, start in childhood. And it continues to manifest itself into adulthood. I told you about my neighbors in Mississippi. The mother was afraid of dogs, and she made all 3 of her children deathly afraid of dogs. If they saw a dog, they'd go running into the house, even if it was a half a mile away, because they were so deathly afraid of them. So that was a conditioned phobia. Phobias that begin in adulthood tend to be especially stubborn and tend to only improve with treatment. Social phobias are severe, persistent, and unreasonable fears of social or performance situations in which embarrassment may occur. And of course, these people are afraid of being embarrassed. I told you about my dream, and of course, it's just a dream about forgetting things. I had a dream the other day that I forgot my pants, and of course, I'm running around trying to find my pants. I left them in my office, and I couldn't find my office. I mean, it was just a stupid, stupid dream. I'm not going to forget my pants, I promise. They may be narrow, fear of talking or performing in public, eating in public, using a public bathroom, and of course we see this all the time. Writing in front of others. One of the jobs I had when I was in the military was collecting drug urines. So I got to watch all these people urinate, which was just fascinating. It was boring as hell. But there were some individuals that couldn't collect a urine specimen while somebody was watching them. This was a problem. Some of these guys, they'd come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd still be there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, wanting to go home, of course, and were still having problems. They were drinking all this water and whatnot. So you ask yourself, how in the world did we do it? Sent them into the toilet stall and let them collect it in there. It's the only way I could do it. And of course, there were ways that we checked all the urines when they came in to make sure that they were actually, you can pour urine into anyway. We checked it all, don't worry about it. And I was the worst one. I had people offer me all kinds of money if I would, switch urines with somebody else or whatever. That's okay. I don't need money. I'm pretty well off. I'm okay. They may be more general, the fear of performing in public forum, of course. 8% of the population may have social phobias. 8% of the people may be afraid to do this, that, or the other. There are more women, three women to every 2 men have social phobias. So women are more likely to have social phobias than men are. Okay, well, we won't worry about the rest of it. Okay, behaviorists feel that phobias are cases of either classical conditioning or modeling. Once upon a time, a child sees a snake. That's an unconditioned stimulus, of course. They see it slither mysteriously away, creating fear. Where did it go? It was there and then it was gone. Unconditioned stimulus also. They develop fear against snakes, of course. That's an unconditioned response. So the next time they see a snake, of course, they have a conditioned stimulus, which is the snake, and they have a conditioned response, which is the fear. And they feel that that's the way people develop their specific fears or phobias. It is a stimulus. If a stimulus is ever presented in conjunction with a fear response for something else, the individual may mistakenly equate the fear with a fear-producing stimuli through stimulus generalization. And we see this from time to time. So the person, I'm afraid of traveling in a elevator, so I also can't walk upstairs that are in a closed environment. That would be a similar situation. The most common method of dealing with phobias is through exposure treatments. And there's 3 major exposure treatments, systematic desensitization, flooding, and modeling. And all of them have to do with exposing the individual to the fear stimulants. Systematic desensitization is a technique developed by Joseph Volpe. The reason that he developed it is because they couldn't figure out how to fix these people. And then Volpe said, look, why don't we just incrementally increase the amount of contact they have with the fear stimulus? So initially, if somebody shows you a picture of a spider, my wife, if I show her a picture of a tarantula, she just gets all freaked out. One time, where were we? We were in Amsterdam. This is when we were in Germany. We were in Amsterdam. We always went to the zoo. I just loved going to the zoo. The kids could identify, the ring-tailed this and the red pandas and whatnot. I mean, the kids could identify all the animals. It was really fantastic. So we went to a zoo right outside of Amsterdam. We're headed to Amsterdam for the Easter weekend. And so we went to the zoo and we're walking around and we went into this area that was the deserts of Arizona. I'm going, oh, really? What could possibly be in here? So we're walking around, my wife's standing there, and there's this glass cage right here, right on her shoulder. And she looks over, and here's a tarantula, like this far away from her. I mean, it's as big as my hand, it was huge. And my wife just about had a fit. We had to leave the zoo. I think she may have soiled herself or something. Anyway, my poor wife. I apologize. And I didn't know it was there, and I didn't realize she was afraid of tarantulas. Of course, I'm not afraid of tarantulas. What do I care? It's a spider, right? People eat spiders. Anyway, so Volpe came up with this way of conditioning people not to be afraid of whatever their fear stimulus is, and he called it systematic desensitization. Because as you can see, what he started with was a picture, and then he used relaxation therapy. If they had a negative reaction to the picture, then they held the picture, which seems to be one of the stages that you have to go through. Then they had a rubber spider, and then they had the rubber spider in the hand. Then they had the rubber spider in her hand, and then eventually, of course, a real spider. And eventually she's got the spider crawling all over her. And systematic desensitization. And you can do this with just about anything. In flooding, the fear-inducing stimuli is presented en masse, like being thrown in the deep end of a pool and forced to swim, and that is known as flooding. We can do this with all kinds of interesting things. They do this with tobacco. So if you're trying to quit smoking, what they'll do is they'll put you in a room with a bunch of cigarettes. And they tell you, go ahead, smoke, but you have to smoke at least 15 every hour or something like that. So here you're constantly smoking your cigarette, and you're actually making yourself nauseous by smoking all this tobacco. So eventually you get to the point where you don't want to smoke anymore because it hurts too much, tastes too bad. Modeling, in modeling, the client observes other people handling or dealing with their fear object. Eventually, they too can handle the fear object since they have modeled so many other people handling it. So they get to see other people doing what it is that they're afraid of doing. And by watching other individuals, they learn that other people can handle it. And maybe they can too. Flooding and modeling. Okay, let's talk about obsessive-compulsive disorder, one of my favorites. If we're dealing with college professors, tons of college professors have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Maybe not the disorder, but they're obsessive-compulsive. Okay, this is one of the major problems that college professors have. The other one is Asperger's syndrome. I don't have either one. Don't worry about it. I would never talk about myself so negatively. But I've been teaching for 25 years, and I come in contact with this and with Asperger's syndrome over and over and over and over and over again. I had a good friend in college. I think I told you the story. I had a good friend in college. He had Asperger's syndrome. Became a college professor. He finished his PhD in 3 years. Well, he's kind of obsessive compulsive. I know. Finished it in 3 years. He was kind of an amazing guy. He teaches Victorian literature. Oh my God, what could be more boring than Victorian literature? And he's very successful. He's extremely successful, and mainly it's because he's so pretty. He's a really good-looking fellow. If I was as good-looking as him, I'd take over the world. But he sits there and he just lectures like this, and all the girls. It's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where everybody's madly in love with Indiana Jones, and the girl said, "Well, you want your It's never happened to me." Even with people that I was in love with, or theoretically were in love with me. Anyway, obsessions and compulsions. Obsessions are persistent thoughts, ideas, impulses, or images that seem to invade a person's consciousness. These are obsessions. They can't get away from these things. Germs. Germs are too dangerous, so I have to wash my hands all the time. That's an obsession. That's the obsession, and the fact that I have to wash my hands all the time, that's my compulsion. So germs are too... Everything has to be in the right order. My God, look how twisted this cord is. We can't have that, can we? Oh my God. Everything has to be in just one certain spot. Obsessive-compulsive disorder. So the obsessions are the thoughts, and the compulsions are the rigid behaviors or the mental acts that you have to go through to get over your obsessions. Obsessive-compulsive disorder is excessive and unreasonable obsessions causing great anxiety and compulsions to reduce or prevent the anxiety. So the whole point is these things are, they take over your life, these obsessions and these compulsions. The obsessions are the thoughts, the things that you can't get away from, and the compulsions are the ritualistic acts that you have to go through in order to survive. Okay? You can be obsessive-compulsive without having obsessive-compulsive disorder. Okay? I get you. You don't have to have a mental illness if you're obsessive-compulsive. I've known lots of people that were obsessive or compulsive with us, one thing or the other. Georgie can't go to sleep until she is sure everything is organized for morning. She cleans all day to ensure herself that things will be perfect. Then she won't feel like things are getting out of control. So her obsession is control. She needs control. So she has to clean things. She has to put things in the right order. Her children and husband walk around afraid to get anything dirty for fear of driving her into another frenzy of cleaning. She cleans all the time. Her house smells like Lysol, okay? I don't know if you've ever been in that house, but it's, wow, it's like spraying Lysol on your nose. Her obsession is that everything must be perfect. Her compulsive behavior, of course, is her constant cleaning. I know, it drives her crazy. As many as 2% of the people in the United States and Great Britain suffer from obsessive-compulsive disorder in any given year. It is equally common in both men and women and begins in youth and in young adulthood. Let's see, how can I explain? It has to do with puberty, okay? So while you're going through puberty, in order for everything to work out perfectly, you get these ideas that you have to do this in order for everything to work out perfectly, and then of course the rituals that we go through in order to make everything happen. Obsessive-compulsive. So it's young adulthood when most of this stuff happens. You rarely see obsessive-compulsive children, but it's possible. It's usually in a household where one of the parents is obsessive-compulsive, or both. I had a colleague who would have to turn off and on the light 7 times. Everything was in 7s, okay? Lucky 7s. Everything was in 7s. He was that way, and his wife, everything was in 11s. So she did everything 11 times, he did everything 7 times. And the kids, it drove the kids crazy. We gave them a dog. Well, a stray dog came to our house, and we picked it up, and she said she always wanted a dog just like that. It was a hound dog. So they took it home. They took it home. They tried to get it to live in a box. The kids wanted the dog to come in the house so that they could play with the dog, but she couldn't have the dog in the house because, well, the dog, its feet were dirty, okay, and it got hair all over the place. Of course, I couldn't see the hair, and I couldn't hardly ever see the dirt. This is in Mississippi. This is so interesting. Anyway, eventually what happened was they gave us back the dog. It was either that or they didn't know what they were going to do with the dog. She was thinking of shaving it. She was just going to put it in a sterilized environment. Oh, it was just nuts. They were going to build a special room for the dog so the kids could go play with the dog. I mean, it was crazy. It was just nuts. And she was the one that had to turn the lights on and off 11 times. And her husband had to do everything in 7s. And he was a math teacher. She was a home ec teacher, okay? Oh, man. The problem she had was with cooking was, sometimes you don't beat your batter. Sometimes you fold it. She couldn't fold things because she had to make sure that it was all mixed properly. So she could never make anything together fold. It was funny. We tried these scones. Evidently it folds scones, and they were just like bricks, Oh, they're the ones that bought, she wanted to own a pipe organ. She played the organ, and she wanted to buy a pipe organ. So they started buying the pipes, and these things are like 9 feet tall. They had these all over the house, these pipes all over the house. She'd have to dust them on the inside. It was crazy. She'd take them off. Anyway, okay, the problem may continue for years, but the symptoms tend to fluctuate from bad to worse. I haven't thought about those people in a long time. Many sufferers are depressed, and many have eating disorders. OCD individuals, female individuals, they may have eating disorders. It's usually not the guys that have eating disorders.
Does that just have to do with control?
Well, in her case, yeah. She was going to build that dog a special room.
Oh, I mean like eating disorders.
Oh, the eating disorders, yeah, it has to do with control. So it's really kind of fascinating watching these people eat because nothing can touch it with anything else. No food can mix. It has to be in a certain shape. Some people eat squares, some people eat triangles, some people eat circles. It's just bizarre. Yeah, and it has to do with the anorexia because they can't eat all the food. You give them, They'll count their beans. They'll count their. You give them macaroni and cheese, and they'll count the macaronis. And if one of them's cut in half, they have to throw that part out. You know, if there's too much cheese on it, they'll have to scrape it over to the side. It's so much fun. I grew up on a farm. If they gave you food, you ate it. And you didn't try to shape it. Otherwise, your brother would get a hold of it. We used to fight over French fries and ketchup. Obsessions are thoughts that feel both intrusive and foreign to the people who experience them. Attempts to ignore or resist these thoughts may produce even more anxiety. Now the problem is, and here I'm laughing about all this stuff, the reality is these people are really serious about this stuff, okay? And I'm laughing because it is kind of strange to count their beans or whatever. Yeah, that's just the way it works. And I apologize for laughing about this. It's how you put up with this kind of stuff. Anyway, yeah, can you imagine working in a hospital and having obsessive-compulsive disorder? Oh, man. Attempts to ignore or resist these thoughts may produce even more anxiety, and of course, they can't. And you tell them, well, just don't do that anymore. You know, and they can't do it. They just can't do it. You know, don't count your beans anymore. Just eat your beans, okay? And don't dust off the chair before you sit down in it. They can't do it. People are usually quite aware that their thoughts are excessive and inappropriate. Really kind of fascinating. If you've ever dealt with a group of these individuals, you can't put them in group therapy together because they start stealing each other's obsessions. So you start out with somebody that's a counter and somebody that's a toucher and somebody that's a hand washer, and all of a sudden everybody's washing, counting, and touching everything. I know. So they'll steal each other's obsessions. It's just bizarre. They may take the form of wishes that one's spouse might die. I know that's kind of a tragic one. Impulses, repeated impulse to yell obscenities at work or church. Images, fleeting visions of forbidden sexual scenes. And I apologize for this, but the reality is we can't get away from Freud. Sex is in just about all of these mental illnesses, and that's one of the reasons why he came up with the hysterias that he did. But this is just the way it is with mental illness. A lot of them have to do with sex. Ideas, notions that germs are lurking everywhere, and doubts, concerns that one has made or will make a wrong decision. And of course, these have to do with the obsessions that people have.
Hey, Gregory,
Yes.
are there a lot of OCD people that must be mental?
No, they can't handle it. They get medically boarded out, and it doesn't take very long. They can make it through basic training. Of course, you remember basic training. It was kind of dirty, wasn't it? Okay, yeah, a lot of germs around. When I was in basic training, one of the things they made me do was clean the bathroom with my toothbrush. Oh, you think that's funny?
I'm laughing because I had to do it once.
You had to do it too? Well, the reason I had to do it was because I didn't go to church. And everybody else went to church on Sunday. So what in the world is the TI going to make me do on Sunday? Yeah, clean the bathroom with my toothbrush.
I had to teach them how to clean.
Oh, there you go. That's possible. This isn't the old days. This is back in the 70s when everybody knew how to clean. I wasn't a good cleaner with my toothbrush. I was only allowed one toothbrush. But he figured since I didn't go to church, I was going to hell anyway. So he might as well send me there a little bit faster.
That's why I did it.
Is that why you
church
got
on Sunday.
I don't get that. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Because all the Catholics had to go one time, and Protestants, and I got more free time if I just stayed.
Oh man, I didn't go ever. So I got to wash the bathroom with my toothbrush every Sunday. So it started tasting pretty nasty.
When it comes to cleaning, I have a little bit of OCD.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, because I have to have everything perfect. Do this way, this way, this way.
Well, you survived the military, and they didn't board you out, so I guess it's not obsessive-compulsive disorders. Just a little bit of obsessive-compulsive functioning, I guess. Let's skip Harvey. Let's not worry about Harvey. We've already talked about cleaning the bathroom with our toothbrushes. Compulsive behavior is technically under voluntary control of the individual. Theoretically, you can control it yourself, and that's what everybody else does, but this person can't do it. However, the people that have compulsions don't feel that they have a choice as to whether to do it or not. These individuals recognize that their behavior is unreasonable, but they feel at the same time that if they do not perform the compulsion, something bad will happen. Something bad has happened in the past, and now they feel if they don't do it, then that bad thing is going to happen again. If you step on a crack, guess what happens to your mother's back? We all know that, don't we? Okay. If you like your mother, you don't step on the cracks. If you do like your mother, then you... Wait a minute. Okay. Well, anyway, I stepped on the cracks. It didn't make any difference. It never broke my mother's back. I used to tease her. We'd be walking along in town. We lived in the country. So if we were in town, I'd just jump on all the cracks. And she thought... She'd get mad at me. She thought that was funny. After they perform the compulsive act, they feel less anxious for a short period of time, and that's one of the reasons why they have to do this compulsion. It's almost like a tic disorder. It builds up in their system, and they think about it all the time. They think about doing it. So when the opportunity arises to either turn the light off or on, my friend had to do it 7 times. His wife had to do it 11 times. Well, the kids did it 9 times, of course, because mom did it 11 and dad did it 7 times. So if they were someplace, they would do it 9 times. But they didn't have obsessive-compulsive disorder. As soon as they went away to college, their obsessions and compulsions went away. They had to do it for their parents, as odd as, well, it's not that odd. Many people develop elaborate rituals that they must perform in order to feel comfortable, and of course that is why they do the rituals. Lots of different rituals. These are just fascinating. The most common is the cleaning compulsion. Moses sitting over there. This is probably the most common, the cleaning compulsion. These people feel that they must clean continuously to get things to the level of cleanliness that will keep them safe. Okay, yeah. So they have to clean everything. Yeah, constantly. Yeah, I know. And they throw out their shoulder and yeah, exactly. Checking compulsions are also very common. These individuals check door locks, they check gas taps, light fixtures a select number of times before they are sure that it's properly disengaged and can't do them any harm. My wife was definitely afraid of somebody being in the house. So she would send me back in the house to make sure that there was nobody in the house. This is after we had just left. I had to go back in the house to check things. This is my first one. Then when we got home, guess who got to go in first and check under the bed, in the closets, under every bed, in every closet. I had to check in the place that she was the most afraid of was the closet that had the hot water heater in it. I have no idea why. And every time that I came outside, she'd say, "You didn't check the closet in the bedroom, did you?" And I'd say, "Yeah, sure I checked." She'd say, "No, you didn't." Because I'm a liar. Everybody knows I'm a liar. So I would have to, I'd say, "Okay, I'll go back in and I'll check it." And I'd check it, and she would say, "You didn't check the hot water heater closet, did you?" I'd say, "Yes, I did." She'd say, "No, you didn't." And I'd have to go back and check it. I know, this sounds stupid, doesn't it? She had an obsessive-compulsive disorder that I was the one that got stung by it. I had a doctor that I worked for in Oklahoma, and this guy was obsessive-compulsive. He wasn't obsessive-compulsive himself. He was a slob, but he made everybody else clean everything. He would, and I was working in the laboratory, and there were cabinets right here. He'd open the doors and get his stuff out, and then he wouldn't close them. And of course, I'm working away, and I would lift up, and all of a sudden I got a door in my head. And he would do this over and over and over again, and he only got me one time. I only hit my head one time. The rest of the time, I'm slamming doors and making sure everything's closed, because this guy's after me. He wants to punch a hole in my head, bastard. Anyway, but I survived. Don't worry about it. The doctors agree. He's overweight, he's obsessive-compulsive, but I survived. You were worried, weren't you? No, I survived. It's okay. Touching, verbal, or counting compulsions. Oh, I'm sorry. Order and balance. We see this all the time. I was watching Inferno last night, and Inferno, there is a doctor in Inferno who has to arrange everything. And so if you get something out of place, they would rearrange it. I had a friend that had one of these compulsions, and I'd go into his office and I'd rearrange his desk. I know, it sounds cruel, but I did it for a reason, because he was kind of a jerk. And I was paying him back. Anyway, so they have this thing about arranging things. Touching, verbal, or counting compulsions, they have rituals of touching, talking to, or counting select items before the individual can feel comfortable with them. If you've ever watched Monk on television, Monk has a counting ritual. He has to touch things, and he counts things. Yeah, anyway, kind of fascinating. Yes?
Can I ask you a question about that? Oh, I know someone who has to listen to the TV, radio, everything when they have a volume control. It has to be on an odd number.
Oh, really?
I have to have it on the even number.
You need to have it on the even number?
Yeah.
All right.
They
Well,
can't.
it's me. This is being honest. Is that like a compulsive thing?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. So there's two of you.
It bothers me. If it's
Yeah,
on
it does the
odd
same
number.
thing to me too. It
bothers
bugs me. If it's on even, when someone will change a channel.
Don't ever go to each other's house.
We can't watch TV together.
That's
I'll wait too, because I don't want anybody to think I'm weird. So if they turn it up to 30, and I'll kind of wait a minute, and I'll grab my remote and hit 31 or 29. Just
What's the difference? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
But obviously, it's preference.
Do you do that too?
Yeah, I do.
But hers is
Like
is
if I
even
tell,
numbers.
if like my daughter goes and turns it up and it's an odd number, I'll put it back on the even. Yeah, I do the same thing. It has to be on an even number. Or even like if I'm using a microwave or anything that has a number, it has to be even.
I'll do that in the radio too, in the car.
I was going to say it's the most pathological thing you can do, John, but I was just teasing.
You're just odd over there.
Yeah, I'm on.
You're just odd.
What do you mean, pain?
So what if you guys have to make?
No, they're talking about the volume control.
Yeah.
Volume control on television.
On the radio.
I do another thing I've always done since I think I was little. When I'm walking, the tiles.
Yeah.
You know how like on a chessboard, the rook will move
Right.
one over and then three up? I don't know why I do
How
that.
can you be in the military and walk like that?
Well, that's the thing, those, yeah, you didn't pay attention.
Just the volume control, right? And the walking control. Okay, this is fascinating. Let's skip old no neck. Cognitive perspective of OCD. Since we all have intrusive thoughts, but only some of us develop OCD, the characteristics of people who develop it include they tend to be more depressed than other people. They have high standards of conduct and morality. So these are really moral individuals. I have a brother that will not drive over the speed limit. If he's driving into a town and it goes from 55 to 45, he hits the brakes. So he's at 45. I know, he's a little strange. Anyway, so they have a high standard of conduct and morality. Of course, he's my Vietnam veteran, the combat veteran, the one that was a combat engineer. Well, I told you this story in the last class, but yeah, he's got some interesting problems. A lot of it has to do with morality, because he would go into the spider holes. He was one of the tunnel rats, and it was kind of a stressful job. And he did some immoral things while he was over there. They believe that their thoughts are equivalent to actions, so he only does the right thing. Never drives over the speed limit, which drives me nuts. Okay, so how fast do I drive between here and Gallup? Is it 70? Am I going 70 now? I was going 70 the other day and I didn't pass anybody, but I got passed, so I'm wondering. 55? Have to go 55? Actually, I passed one guy. And he had just pulled out and he was going 55. He's kind of an old beater truck, you know. Drives sideways.
Probably hoping you'd hit him so you could hit him.
For the insurance. They believe that they can and should have perfect control over their thoughts and behaviors, and of course for this reason. These individuals tend to have a little bit of problem with select things. The discovery of medications has given researchers an insight into the cause of OCD. What they've discovered is that some antidepressants work on OCD. So if we can raise your serotonin level, it actually can control your OCD. So you don't have to have the television on 30. You can have it on 31 or 29. And of course, Emery's happy because that's right. That's crazy. Okay. Anyway, so now we know that serotonin has something to do with the OCD. And there's a reason for that. There are two areas of the brain that seem to be the locations of your obsessive thoughts. One of them is your caudate nucleus. This is your caudate nucleus right here. And this is your orbital frontal cortex. And as you can see, it's right in front of your brain, in the front of your brain. These two areas have to do with regulating thoughts, regulating obsessions, regulating compulsions. Together, these structures create a circuit that converts sensory information into thoughts and actions. This part of the brain is also the area where our primitive impulses arise, our aggression, and our sexual thoughts come from these two areas, our caudate nucleus and our prefrontal cortex. The impulses pass through the caudate nucleus, which filters them and only sends the most important onto the thalamus, which allows the individual to think more about these thoughts. So it's the thalamus that is controlling what thoughts you think about. The thalamus is the secretary, and it's sending information to different parts of your brain. It's telling you what to think about. Because the caudate nucleus allows unwelcome and unnecessary thoughts in, they become obsessions. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that tempers these thoughts. So serotonin is the neurotransmitter that actually controls whether these obsessions are going to become obsessions or not. So if we can increase your serotonin level, remember the other thing about these individuals is that they tend to be depressed. People that are really obsessive compulsive, not just needing a strange number on the radio or the television. That's not really obsessive compulsive. You don't know obsessive compulsive. Anyway, so it's serotonin, and it's serotonin that controls these primitive sexual and aggressive urges. If we talk about the obsessions and the compulsions that people have, they do tend to be aggressive thoughts. They do tend to be sexual thoughts, and this is a way of controlling those primitive ideas with serotonin. So we can actually treat OCD with antidepressants, and it works. If we can raise your serotonin level, then we can potentially make the OCD less obtrusive. Does all that make sense? Okay, so we're treating OCD with SSRIs. Well, let's get this one. Okay. Okay, we're going to talk about body dysmorphic disorder. Body dysmorphic disorder, dysmorphic means bad shape. So body dysmorphic disorder is an individual that thinks that there is a part of their body that's they don't like, that's out of there's something wrong with it. So if you had if your nose had a crease in it, you think, oh my God, that's the ugliest thing in the world. I have to have that crease taken out of my nose, or a crease in your chin. Oh my God, I've got that crease in my chin. I know Cary Grant had one, but my God, it's so ugly, I can't stand it. You know, so you obsess on this, and every time you look in the mirror, what do you see? You look at your crease in your chin, or the crease in your nose, or the size of your eyes, or whatever, you know, oh, I got pig eyes, you know, that kind of stuff. These individuals think that there's something about them that is ugly. Sometimes they think that they're overweight, and these are individuals that can suffer from anorexia nervosa. They get preoccupied with things. Oh, this weekend, I don't know if anybody watched this CPAC. That's the conservative thing. It's in Fairfax, Virginia. Anyway, Trump was at CPAC, and he was talking about all kinds of
Political Action Committee?
I'm sorry?
Like
Political Action Committee, yeah, Conservative Political Action Committee. Anyway, he was talking about his hair, and everybody makes fun of Donald Trump's hair because he's got all this comb over going. You know, it's kind of a comb over all over his hair. And he says, I'm really afraid that I have this bald spot on the top of my head, and I really try to cover it up. I don't want anybody to see this bald spot on the top of my head. Well, he's got body dysmorphic disorder. A minor case, of course. I got a bald spot on top of my head too, but it doesn't bother me that much because I can't see it. But he can't, evidently. So he combs over his hair. Really kind of fascinating. So some people don't like their lips, some people don't like their noses, their eyebrows, their cheeks, their ears. My ears are too big, you know, that kind of thing. It usually has something to do with their faces, but there are some people that change their entire bodies. This is known as body dysmorphic disorder. This is a lady that wanted to become Barbie. She's from the Ukraine. She doesn't eat. She says she lives off air, which is really kind of fascinating. But as you can see, she's only had one operation, she says. She's had her breasts enhanced. But she kind of looks like a plastic doll. She really does.
I thought she got one rib, or a rib taken out.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know. I was reading about her. It didn't say anything about the rib. Okay, she's had a rib taken out. But as you can see, she's awfully skinny. Slender. Sorry, did I say skinny? But of course, guys can have the same problem. This guy looks like this guy looks like he's been in the weight room, but he's never been in the weight room. He has cosmetic surgery to give himself a six-pack, to give himself deltoids, to give himself pecs. He's had 157 different operations, and now he looks like a Ken doll. This is what he looked like before. And this is what he looks like now, after 157 operations, and he's not finished. He spent over $500,000 on operations. Who's got that much money?
He looks different now. He had some work done to his face too.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he's different?
Yeah.
This is an old picture?
Last year.
Okay. Yeah. He spends no...
We're Facebook friends.
Body dysmorphic disorder. He's got body dysmorphic disorder. Doesn't like the way his butt looks, so he gets implants put in his butt. He wants a six-pack, so he gets implants put in his abdomen.
What's six-pack?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by six-pack?
Six-pack. He's got six abdominal abdominal muscles. And if you can see them, it's called a six-pack. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
As opposed to a pony cake.
That's, yeah, exactly. Anyway, the disorder can involve any area of the body showing it as excessive concern over the size or the shape of the hands, the feet, the buttocks, the breasts, the genitals, body size, or overall build. In other words, you think that you're pear-shaped, and I wish I were, I looked like a triangle instead of a pear. All of these can potentially be problems. Women, of course, have enhanced their breasts. They've made their breasts larger. All the rest of that, the hands and the feet, I don't know. Specifier with muscle dysmorphia has been added to the DSM-5 to capture a particular subset of sufferers who believe that their body build is too small or insufficiently muscular. These are individuals that have body dysmorphic disorder that are bodybuilders, and so they work on select areas of their bodies. They try to build up their pecs. They try to build up their deltoids. They try to build up something. on their body that they don't like. They may take steroids, which are very dangerous to take, in order to build themselves up. Listen.
Do you think these are like first world problems?
First world problems.
Yeah. You think
Oh, you mean the people that are starving to death in the third world? They don't really.
Or do you think this is like worldwide no matter what?
I don't, that's a good question. I've never really thought about it. This is a brand new disorder that we have just come up with in the DSM-5. We talked about it before, but we had never seen it before. We started, plastic surgery's been around for an extended amount of time, but breast enhancement is relatively new. It's only about 20 or 30 years old. So, wait a minute. Carol Doda was the first one to get breast implants back in the 60s. How many years is that? 50 years? So, yeah.
Probably expired now.
Actually, we do.
Upgraded.
57 years ago.
57 years ago, Carol Doda. There you go. And she was a stripper in San Francisco. Oh, this is when I was in high school.
Oh my God. What's your
I'm glad I didn't hear what he said. People with body dysmorphic disorder can spend several hours each day checking the imagined defect or finding ways to cover up or hide it, and they may alternate between almost constantly looking into mirrors and avoiding them altogether due to the distress associated with looking at themselves. There's a lady that has just enormous breasts, and it's all breast implants. But they're so large that she's had to have ribs taken out in order to accommodate this massive chest that she has decided that she needs on her.
Would this apply to transgender?
No. Different situation. They believe that they are the opposite gender in their minds, and therefore they dislike the body parts that they have. But it's not body dysmorphic disorder. This is somebody that says, "Oh my God, my ears are too big. My nose is too large. My hands are too small." Like picking on poor Donald Trump about his hands. He does have small hands. He really does. Not that that means anything. This is primarily what we're talking about when we talk about body dysmorphic disorder. These are individuals that feel that they're not strong enough, they're not powerful enough. This guy is huge, of course. This is a friend of mine. This is a colleague of mine that I used to teach with over in Clinton, Iowa. He thought that he was too white, so he decided to paint himself orange.
Or college students. Or little kids today.
These are pictures taken in 2013. He was in a bodybuilding contest in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He won the contest. It was a national competition. He's 57 years old in this picture. About 10 days before this competition, he was in a hospital, only steps away from death. He had his kidneys had shut down because one of the things that you have to do in order to look like this is you have to suck all the water out of your body. You have to take diuretics, and he took more than he should have, and his kidneys shut down, and he almost died. It wasn't the first time that had happened either. He was in his office and he had passed out, and they called me upstairs, and we took him to the emergency room, and I knew what was going on. You could tell. My goodness, he had there was no fat on his body anywhere. I mean, you could tell that this was the problem and that he needed water. And we put an IV in his arm. He just about had a fit. As soon as he regained consciousness, he ripped it out of his arm. That's how stupid the guy is. Anyway, he almost killed himself. Not once, but twice, just in order to look like this. Body dysmorphic disorder. He's got really nice trapezius muscles. Well, I can't see them. That's what these muscles right here. These are really big. I mean, they're huge. Anyway, yes, sir.
You mentioned that your friend that changed his skin color. Is it the same thing? I don't know if you've seen on TV, like there's a lot of, there was this other lady who worked for NAACP.
Oh, yeah, the lady up in Washington?
She changed her appearance.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Well, in her case was that she was claiming to be black, and she had no black ancestry whatsoever. She had no African ancestry at all.
Like if you look at her childhood pictures and then her adult pictures,
Yeah,
completely different.
completely different person. She's trying to look black. Yeah, but I would.
Did Sammy Sosa just do that too recently?
I'm sorry?
Sammy Sosa.
Sammy's he's paler now, isn't he? Yeah, it's kind of odd.
Or Michael
Jackson.
Well, is it different from what Michael Jackson did?
Michael Jackson had a skin condition. He lost the pigmentation in his skin. I can't think of the word for it, but I was trying to think of that before class. Yeah, but he has he had a skin pigmentation problem. But there were other things that he did. He had body dysmorphic disorder. And we're going to see the difference between what Michael looked like when he was black and what Michael looked like when he wasn't anymore. Yeah, Sammy Sosa's done exactly the same thing. And he's actually pushing that product that bleaches out your skin. I know. It dissolves your melanin.
Is it hyperpigmentation?
No.
What is it different?
It starts with an I. Type in there Michael Jackson. You should be. They'll talk about it. They'll talk about what his problem was. Anyway, yeah, this guy won the competition. He's a national champion, so he's happy now. Maybe he won't do it again. He's kind of a fascinating fellow because he started out as a monk. Graduated from high school, became a monk, started gaining his education, married a nun. As odd as that sounds, that's not supposed to happen.
So, like with the lady in Washington,
Right.
she didn't dislike herself or her skin color. She wanted something else.
She wanted to be black.
So is that different?
Yeah, it wasn't that she saw something that she didn't like. She just wanted to be another race.
So that's
She
something different.
identified with something. Yeah.
Okay.
Just like
Is
the
it
truth.
Some of the name.
Vitiligo. Vitiligo. Yeah. Vitiligo is really kind of an interesting problem. There are select native groups that have vitiligo. This is very common up in Montana with the different.
Where?
Montana. So you go to Fort Peck, you go to Fort Belknap, you go to the Crow Reservation or the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, and you'll see individuals that suffer from vitiligo. Of course, there they don't try to cover it up. I mean, they got it. So usually not on their face, it's usually on their bodies. But we see this with any group with high levels of melanin. You also see this in the African American population.
Are you talking about the spots?
Yeah, they're white spots. Yeah,
Oh, okay,
white
okay.
spots. I haven't seen it here, but nobody talks about it. Yeah, they're
I heard something really weird
How was it
once.
still like uniform? Like in,
It wasn't. He was spotting out, so he decided to make himself. It was whole. Yeah, he bleached himself like Sammy did. Anyway, I'll get rid of my friend here. He has body dysmorphic disorder. The next picture is Michael Jackson. This is what he looked like when he was black. Cute kid, nice afro. I don't know why he changed his hair color, but we do know. I don't know what's going on with his nose, what's going on with his chin. He's a fairly attractive fellow before turned into kind of a freak. Depression, OCD, and social phobia may co-occur with body dysmorphic disorder, and suicidal ideation may be present. These individuals may be so distraught over the size of their nose or what their nose looks like that they're willing to commit suicide. They want to end it all. They want to stop looking at the wrinkles on their faces or whatever. This is one of the reasons why people get facelifts. I don't know. Botox. I know. Cher can barely talk. She can barely move her lips because she's so Botoxed up. Her face hardly
Kardashian.
even functions anymore. I know. Bruce Jenner, before he became, what is his name?
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn, that's right, Caitlyn Jenner. Yeah, he Botoxed himself a lot.
Really knows. Someone watches E!
Often individuals seek surgery or medical intervention, and they may even resort to self-surgery, although these interventions do not reduce the concern. They still see it, they still recognize it, they still have the body dysmorphic disorder. The prevalence of body dysmorphic disorder is estimated at 2.4% of the adult population. Obviously Sammy Sosa, obviously Michael Jackson had it, obviously whatever, Justin, whatever his name is, he's on television now, I think. I saw him on a television show the other day. I know, it's kind of
Well, I
weird.
thought you said that was his transgender, right?
Justin Jellicoe?
Oh, never mind.
No, it's
Oh, no.
the Ken doll.
Oh.
The English have a Ken doll too. Okay. I know, this is kind of bizarre. The two of them got together and they had pictures taken of their plastic faces. Prevalence may be higher in mental health settings and up to 15% of patients in dermatological settings. It appears to be equally likely in males and females. It begins by adolescence and it tends to have a chronic course. Muscle dysmorphia occurs almost exclusively in males. We very rarely see body dysmorphic disorder that involves muscle dysmorphia in females. Almost never.
I think that's increasing these days, though.
It could be. It could be. It's really, yeah, it's kind of fascinating watching all this stuff coming out. I know, all those bodybuilders, those goofy guys with all those steroids. Stupid.
Can I ask you about one that it's not what we're discussing, but I don't know if it's a disorder or not. People that always feel like they have to have the last word or be right.
Those are PhDs, huh?
Oh my God.
You know, like if you have a discussion with somebody or something.
You know, I have never come across, I've come across that, but I've never come across any pathology that they refer to. I mean, if you've ever talked to a doctor or a lawyer, they all think that they have to get the last name.
I think that's more just like part of the personality.
Yeah.
That's not a disorder.
No, I don't think so. None that I've ever seen. I don't. It's not in the DSM-5, so I'm not exactly sure.
I'll wait for it in 6.
It may be in 6.
Sweet John.
Well, it's really kind of fascinating because with this president, we're getting all kinds of tweets and whatnot, and he seems to always have to have the last word. So it's possible that.
I just know I have a relative that's like that. I think I'm borderline like that. So when I don't want to.
Oh man, you don't want to have a conversation with that individual.
No, I just noticed that some really bad, some people, they can't let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll stew on it even after the argument has ended or the debate is ended and they leave.
Just don't think about it next time they talk to
Yeah,
you.
they'll bring it up and then like 2 weeks later you're like, what are you talking about? Like, you're still on that? It's really crazy.
Yes, of course. Females are more likely, of course, to have comorbid eating disorders. Usually it's anorexia nervosa, and of course there's Michael Jackson. This is what he looked like before his vitiligo, and this is what he looked like. I don't know why he straightened his hair. I don't know. Yes, I do know why he changed the shape of his nose. He's not the only one that did this. He's got 2 sisters that changed the shape of their nose. He also had something done with his chin for some reason. But he straightened his hair. I don't know what that was all about. Yeah, it's a little bizarre. Anyway, he died in his 50s, trying to continue looking like this. He was about to give a concert, and he overdosed.
Xanax? He overdosed with Xanax?
I don't think it was Xanax, was it? It was. I think it was a fentanyl. It was an opioid. Yeah. He and Prince are fentanyl users, and obviously Tom Petty died of fentanyl overdose as well. There's a higher prevalence of body dysmorphic disorder in those who have first-degree relatives with OCD. So they become obsessed with their looks, which is very logical. Childhood neglect and abuse are also risk factors for this condition. They start focusing on themselves. They start seeing things. They will look at themselves, and Uncle Charlie said that they were getting a little paunchy, and so all of a sudden they become anorexic. So if they were abused or neglected as children, they become obsessed with whatever it is people are talking about. It may be intelligence, it may be their looks, it may be their height. Who knows what it could possibly be. The current social and cultural emphasis on physical appearance likely plays a role in its development. If you look at a movie from the 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, people didn't look like they look today. All the actors look the same today. It looks like they're all on steroids. They all lift weights. Is that true? Could that possibly be true? All the women are relatively large-chested. What's going on with all this stuff? But if you look at movies from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, people were different. And this is really kind of fascinating. If the swimsuit issue just came out last week. Got in trouble. Sorry. With my wife, I mentioned the swimsuit issue. She got a copy of it, and I was talking to my wife. All of a sudden, the conversation ended right there. As soon as I mentioned the swimsuit issue, it was all over it. Wow. Anyway, but if you look at the swimsuit issue, it's really kind of fascinating, because once upon a time, it was the most attractive models that they could possibly find. And now suddenly, and it was only white models, except for Tyra Banks was in the swimsuit issue. And now, of course, there are women of color. There are women that are less slender than
Kate Upton.
Than Kate Upton. Yeah, Kate Upton's not that attractive. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. I'm not a fan of Kate Upton, especially after my wife wouldn't talk to me after I mentioned the swimsuit issue. Christy Brinkley's daughter is in there, Sailor Brinkley. It's really kind of fascinating. Anyway, people are changing, and the standards are changing. The standards are changing drastically. It's really kind of interesting. And part of the swimsuit issue didn't have anything to do with swimsuits. It had to do with women empowering themselves and painting things on their bodies. But of course, the odd thing was they didn't have any clothes on. And here they're painting. Of course, you couldn't see anything, but the idea was, swimsuit issue, and they're not wearing swimsuits. So they're painting words all over their bodies, which was kind of curious. I'm not suggesting that you get a hold of the swimsuit issue. It's kind of odd. Half the time they don't have on the whole swimsuit anyway. I mean, who's going to wear that stuff? I mean, really, it doesn't really cover very much. Isn't that odd? Yeah. Who's going to wear that? That's not a swimsuit. You can't swim in that suit.
By the road.
Exactly. It's a good point. Dental floss, of course. Okay, so this is changing. It's changing with time. So we'll see what happens in the future. Things are changing, and of course, you guys are the ones that are going to have to deal with this kind of stuff. I'm not. I'm an old man. I don't have to worry about it unless my wife gets mad because I look at the swimsuit issue. She sent it to me. I don't know why she's so pissed off. Anyway, but you guys are going to have to deal with this because things are changing in the United States. Everything's changing. This whole transgender movement that's going on in the United States. This Me Too movement. For the longest period of time, women were being abused, and we knew about it, and we didn't do anything about it. But of course, all of this is changing. People were looking at their bodies and not liking them and needing plastic surgery. They wanted to get their nose fixed. They wanted to get their breasts enhanced. They wanted to do this or that or the other. This is all brand new. This is all new stuff. You guys are going to be the ones dealing with this. And it may be in the DSM-6. I don't know. Maybe, who knows? We're getting stuff off of television in the DSM-5. The hoarding disorder. This wasn't in the DSM-4.
Compulsive hoarding.
I know. So all of a sudden we see it on television, and now, who knows what the next thing is going to be. So you guys are going to have to deal with this. By golly, psychology is changing, thank goodness. A behavior model of body dysmorphic disorder suggests children might receive greater attention and reinforcement for their appearance than their behavior. And of course, with a select portion of the population, this is completely true. So we may see this in the future. And you guys are going to have to be the ones that tell the APA that things are changing. You guys are the ones that told the APA that we had a problem with, what am I thinking of? With internet addictions. It looks like it's the kids that are going to decide what's going on with gun control. These kids coming out of Douglas, they're the ones that are complaining. They're the ones that are holding the rallies. The adults have passed the buck. It looks like it's the kids that are going to be changing things in the future. So who knows? Everything's going to change, and you guys are going to have to be the one to tell the APA that this is a problem that we need to deal with. Not me. I'll be trying to convince my wife that I didn't really read that magazine. Currently, both SSRIs and CBT are considered first-line treatments for body dysmorphic disorder. CBT, of course, is cognitive behavioral therapy, Beck and Ellis. CBT has been shown to be more useful than SSRIs in effective treatment of BDD. These people don't like a portion of their body. We can treat them with serotonin, we can raise their serotonin level, we can make them happier, but they're still not happy with that part of their body. Body dysmorphic disorder. In the old days, we used to refer to body dysmorphic disorder as somebody didn't like the shape of their nose, or somebody didn't like the shape of their cheeks, or they didn't like the way their chin pointed, or whatever. But now, of course, it is chests, it's body, it's muscle mass. So we've got, it has just increased markedly all over the world. And we see this all over the place.
And it's like way more than just vanity, right?
It is. Yeah, these people are obsessed. I mean, it is an obsession. Yes, sir.
You ever watch Law and Order?
No.
A lot of this stuff you talk about, they're always talking about.
Body
The
dysmorphia.
disorders, just the different disorders you call them.
Exactly. Yeah, they have to deal with it. I mean, you have to deal with this in criminal justice because that's the reason that they're doing what they're doing. That's why they're criminals. So we have to talk about all this pathology. So everything is changing, and you guys are the ones that are going to have to see it and recognize it. If we just go by the DSM-3, my God, the DSM-3 thought homosexuality was a mental illness. Jeez. Everything changes over time. So some of this stuff is going to be thrown out. I've got a book downstairs. I've got that abnormal psychology book. It's fascinating because the book, there's hardly anything in there that's right for today's psychology. This was when I started reading this when it was the DSM-2, not the DSM-5. So, I mean, everything has changed, and everything is going to change in the future. So if you see a problem that seems to be new today, in the DSM-6, it may be actually in there. There are pathologies that you're going to be dealing with, and it's your job to deal with those pathologies. Cognitive behavioral techniques employ education, relaxation, and systematic desensitization, of course, involving graduated exposure to the parts of the body that evoke distress, yada, yada, yada. Okay, hoarding disorder. This is a brand new one. I know. I came in contact with hoarding way back in the 90s, in the 80s. Where was I? I was in Omaha. So this is the 80s. We had a lawyer, and she wouldn't throw away newspapers. She wouldn't throw away magazines, and her house was just piled up with magazines. She had cats. Of course, they urinated on everything. It was quite an interesting odor. And she didn't bathe. So people started noticing the odor, and she'd go to court, and the judge would say, do you smell something? That kind of thing. And eventually she got to the point where she couldn't go into anybody's court. Not everybody has the same sense of smell that other people do. There's a relatively large portion of the population that don't smell anything. Potentially that was what her problem was. She became a consultant because she couldn't go to court anymore, because the judges wouldn't let. She smelled bad. She smelled terrible. Her girlfriend had a heart attack, and we had to respond. And of course, I know, I got the job. Lucky me, I got the job. So here we are, we're walking in this, we walk into the house, the lady opens the door, and of course it hits you like a brick, it hits you really hard. The smell is really very strong. So you walk into the place, and it's a path. We used to call them path people, because they had paths throughout their houses, and there's these stacks of things. They won't throw anything away. And here you are, you're sneaking around. If you got shoulders, you're knocking stuff down, and they're getting all upset with you. Oh, that's how you got that out of order, that kind of stuff. And we finally, made our way back to the back bedroom, and we found the lady. She was dying of a heart attack. And we treated her, and we tried to cart her out, but we couldn't use a gurney because, well, you couldn't walk. It was a path. I mean, it was literally a path. And the gurney was too wide to get in there. So we had to take a what's the word?
Stretcher.
Stretcher. We had to take a stretcher in there. Yeah, and it was thinner, of course, and we could actually cart the lady out. She almost died because we couldn't get through her. I mean, it was crazy. But the smell, oh my God, you wouldn't believe the smell. Anyway, we used to refer to these people as path people. This is back in the 80s. Now that we've seen more and more of this hoarding, of course, now it's become a form of pathology. Collecting items that are later unable to discard. This is hoarding disorder. That they will not discard. Persistently difficulty in parting with personal possessions. They won't throw anything away, regardless of the actual value of the things. Everything that they have in their house, they want to keep. They think that it's all worth something. It may be worth something someday. Hoarding disorder causes clinically significant distress or impairment and compromises living areas. As you can see, how in the world can you live in this environment? In addition to insight specifiers, diagnosis can be specified with excessive acquisition when items continue to be collected beyond available space to store them. You've seen this on television. The people can't get in their front doors. They have to crawl in the windows. They have to find there is a path, a specific path that you have to go through in order to get to whatever you're getting to. And of course, there's nothing in the refrigerator because it's full of stuff, full of junk. As you can see, they never throw anything away. Ritz cracker box, there's just stuff all over the place. It's nasty. Hoarding listed among symptoms of OCD and obsessive-compulsive disorder in the DSM-4. It has received an independent status as standing as a diagnosis in the DSM-5. The prevalence in the population was recently estimated at 5.8%. Now, we all may have a little bit of hoarder in us, but these are people that their houses are so full that they have to move someplace else. I'm sure you've seen people's garages that they can't get into. I had a colleague in Montana who had a double garage. Well, it was a triple garage. It was huge, and it was full. It was full of stuff. He had an old Mercedes in there, but you couldn't tell what color it was because he had it buried with other stuff. He had wire. He had old carburetors. He had stuff. He had just stuff, piles and piles. Screws. I don't think the guy had ever thrown a screw away. He didn't throw nails away, no matter how bent they were and how rusty they were. And the fact that he would never, ever be able to use that damn nail again, but he wouldn't throw it away. He put it in a coffee can. He had stacks and stacks and stacks of stuff. I mean, stuff. I needed tar paper. And he said, I got some tar paper. So it took us like 3 hours to get to the tar paper. It was up in the attic. of his garage. I know, and he knew exactly where it was. He really did. He knew exactly where it was. He couldn't get to it. He had to climb up on top of this, and then he was an old man. Oh, jeez. Anyway, he was a bit of a hoarder. His wife wouldn't let him hoard in the house, so he hoarded in his garage. And his garage was bigger than the house. I know, it was stupid. It was so crazy. 5.8% of the population. People do this with lots of things. They hoard cars for parts. You never know when you're going to need a 38 Chevy running board. I don't know. They've got trucks, and they'll buy the same kind of car, so potentially they can use parts off of the old cars. Of course, the old cars and the new cars, they don't have anything to do with one another. Anyway, they'll hoard anything. They'll hoard animals. This happens in Montana all the time. Individuals will collect horses or dogs or cats or birds. There was a bird lady at Great Falls, and she had like 300 canaries in her house. And you can imagine, I mean, she's feeding them, of course. So guess what happens after she feeds them? Exactly. So her house was slick. I mean, literally it was slick. As horrible as all this stuff is, I know all you OCD people that are cleanliness addicts are
Clean my house.
starting to
When I
get the
get
wind
back,
up.
throw out stuff.
This is 3 times more prevalent in older adults than younger adults, and it shows increased severity with each decade of life. The older you are, the more likely you're going to be one of these hoarders. A lot of times it has to do with TBI, it has to do with strokes, it has to do with something, a brain damage in your head, of course. It tends to run in families. About 50% of hoarders have a relative who is also a hoarder. And the crazy thing is they'll compare their hoards. They'll say, hey, look at this, I've got this old Ritz box. And the other guy says, oh no, I've been looking for something. Is it okay if I take it? You never know when you're going to need a Ritz box. I know. Ritz crackers. This drives you crazy. Hoarders, here's some pictures of dogs and cats. We'll start here next time. Because I've got a story. I've got a story about dogs.
Oh, no.
And Arizona. This is about Arizona.
Look at you,
So.
baby.